I'm Phil, and I'm co-founder of EasyA, and we've been co-hosting this together with UniReach, and Zoe is co-president of UniReach. So I think most people will already have heard a little bit more about me, but Zoe, would you like to tell everybody a little bit more about UniReach, about what you do, and also, yeah, maybe a little bit of an intro to yourself and sort of what you're studying at Oxford, which year you're in?
Yeah, hi. I'm Zoe. I'm a first year studying geography at St Edmund Hall, Oxford. And as Phil has already said, I am co-president of UniReach. I'm sure Naman has already kind of introduced you to the basics of what we do at UniReach. But basically, we offer free mentoring services for people who want to apply to Oxbridge, and they can receive support on things like personal statements, interviews, admissions tests, all of that fun stuff. And we've also been kind of putting on different events. Recently, we run Oxbridge Unlocked, which was a huge success, and we had over 400 students and teachers signed up, which is amazing. And we're kind of looking forward to doing more kind of workshops in future to support people in their applications. And now we're really looking forward to as well partnering with EasyA to support people earlier on in the application process as well.
Super. Yeah, we're really excited to partner too. At EasyA, what we do is we connect students with tutors right on demand, and our vision for this really aligns with UniReach. So they'll connect you with an amazing mentor within 24 hours. So if you are stuck on something, if you do need a little bit of support, or if you are wondering about Oxford and just want to talk with somebody who's currently there, UniReach are the perfect people to go to. So yeah, just coming into then the sort of what we're here to talk about today. Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit more about sort of what you're studying? I know you're studying geography, but what is that like to study at Oxford? I mean, when you study at GCSE, I didn't even take it GCSE. Before GCSE, and then I dropped it, and it was sort of well, the main thing I remember was like onion skin weathering, longshore, and that sort of stuff. But I assume that at university it's slightly different.
Yeah, I think the stereotype of us just kind of colouring in, looking at maps and just kind of looking at rocks as well, all of that's kind of stuck, even though, you know, it couldn't be further from the truth. I actually think a lot more people would be interested in taking geography if they knew how diverse it was, you know. So there's like the human geography side, and you're looking at things like politics and sociology and international relations and all of that kind of stuff, and even in economics, and bringing that all in and kind of analysing how people kind of interact with their physical environment and different things about societies. And actually there's been a lot of ties to kind of lots of topical things like in the news, and I love how you know, up to date it is, and how basically anything which is going on in the news, you know, it might be COVID, or it could be, you know, Black Lives Matter protests, things like that. Like you can actually just discuss that in tutorials, which is amazing. And then on the physical geography side, you can be a little bit more scientific, and so you can kind of look at applying physics and chemistry and biology and things like that, and you can be more hands-on and practical. I haven't been able to do much kind of field work, which is actually in person, obviously, but that will be really fun. Hopefully next term we'll be outside and just getting our hands messy, and I think that's really great, the diversity in the subject.
Cool. Yeah, no, that sounds very different. I think that sounds a lot more interesting than, yeah, just sort of coloring stuff in, and yeah, talking about longshore drift and how that all works. And you're studying at St Edmund, which is nicknamed Teddy's Hall. Teddy Hall, right?
Yeah, Teddy Hall. And they have got actually like a giant teddy bear as well in the JCR, which is the junior common room, which is quite fun.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was at Pembroke at Cambridge, and we actually had something called, well, I guess it was sort of a play on Pembroke. It was called Paddy Pembroke, which was this teddy bear which would come out as bops. And yeah, for anybody who doesn't know what a bop is basically, I don't know why, but it's just called a bop, and it's basically a party that happens at college. And so every sort of at the beginning of every term and the end of every term, you have a bop. And this teddy bear would always make an appearance, and somebody would carry him around and just sort of, he'd get passed along the crowd. So I guess it's sort of every college has their own little tradition about what happens at BOP. But I think, yeah, this year you probably didn't have too many bops, right? So, or
Yeah,
college.
yeah. So we haven't had any bops so far, but there are plans for us to kind of have more kind of COVID friendly celebrations next term. Like at Teddy Hall, we have something where it's called Women of the Hall, and they have Men of the Hall, and it's basically like everyone goes out, and they get dressed up in fancy dress. There's always kind of a new wacky theme. Like I think they did kind of Where's Wally one year, and the theme in Michaelmas term, which is the first term, was Whatsits, and so it was basically anything orange. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that yet, but we're going to be doing that next term, which will be good fun. And for me, it'll be a chance to actually meet people in the different year groups. So I'm really looking forward to that.
So you actually just mentioned a word which a lot of people might not be. That was Michaelmas term.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe explain a little bit more about that, and also sort of the weird terminology that there's like Michaelmas, Lent, and then one thing that's pretty weird is the Oxford week starts on not a Monday, right?
Yeah, no, it is really strange. Yeah, so we've got 3 terms, and instead of just calling them first term, second term, and third term, we've got Michaelmas, we've got Hilary, and we've got Trinity. And yeah, no, me trying to explain that in Michaelmas this and this happened to my friends, they definitely mocked me because they were just like, what is Michaelmas? So I think that is kind of an Oxbridge thing. And yeah, it is strange because the week does start on a Sunday, and so you do have to kind of wrap your head around that a little bit. I think most of my classes still start on a Monday, but for some reason it starts on a Sunday, the week. And also you kind of have these labels for the week. You've got North week, first week, second week, and it can get a little bit confusing because often they don't refer to a specific date. They just kind of say, you know, this piece of work is due on Wednesday of 7th week, and you've just got to kind of figure out when that is.
Yeah. No, I mean, so yours starts on Sunday. I think at Cambridge ours would start on a Thursday, and I have no idea why. You might know why the Oxford one starts on a Sunday. No worries if you don't. I mean, I have no idea why the Cambridge one starts.
Yeah, I've got no idea.
Just one of those weird things, and I think also I guess the only thing that might put people off. I mean, obviously, it sort of won't really put you off, but there are no bank holidays in the Cambridge week, and maybe similar at Oxford.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. You know, I've only been in Oxford in person in just one term really, so I'm not quite sure, but yeah, maybe that's the case.
Yeah, what have they got planned for when you go back then? Some interesting social events, I think.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, with the WAFT nights, the Women of the Hall nights, they've got a couple of them lined up. And then they're trying to resume sport, which is really exciting. Rowing was something which I just wanted to try because, you know, when at Oxbridge, you know, rowing is obviously a huge deal there. And so I thought that is definitely something which I want to get stuck into. I haven't been able to be on the water yet, but hopefully next term, you know, booked my swim test, so I'm ready to go for that. And it's amazing just to even apparently watch the races. Obviously I haven't done that yet, but it's supposed to be something which brings the whole community together, whether or not you like sports. So I'm looking forward to that. And just as well, taking part in formals. So these are kind of formal dinners where you get 3 courses, and you might get a glass of wine if you drink it, and you wear kind of your gown. So it's all quite fancy, but it's a nice occasion to get together. So I'm looking forward to getting back into that, because I think that was one of my favourite times of the day, was just getting to sit with my household and catch up and just kind of be in that magical kind of environment.
Yeah, I mean, the formals are something which is really super and pretty unique, because you are sitting in this massive hall, and it's kind of like, it kind of really is like Hogwarts. Like, there are candles, everyone's eating a served meal, and everyone's dressed in their gowns. And I mentioned last time that at formals, what often happens is something called pennying. And what happens if somebody is drinking a glass of wine and you pop a penny in there, then that person has to down it. And one actually sort of funnier one is there's also something called 5 pennying, where if the server is carrying some food to you, and so that will actually sort of, most of the time, that'll be the dessert. And if the person sort of who wants to 5-penny you, pop the 5-penny in the dessert before you can put your fork in it. There are lots of rules to this. If they put it in before the fork gets into the dessert, then you have to eat it without the cutlery. So it involves a couple of people basically having to eat the food with their face.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, we haven't done that yet. That's wow.
Lots to look forward to when when COVID sort of finally ends, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
Are there any sort of other weird traditions that you've come across so far while sort of you've been at Oxford?
Well, I think as well, like matriculation is always quite an interesting thing. Matriculation is basically when like everyone is kind of welcomed into the university. Obviously, my experience is quite unconventional, being a first year during a pandemic, and so usually you'd be in kind of this fancy auditorium. And they speak in Latin, and yeah, it's a tradition which has gone back, I think, like hundreds of years or something like that. And everyone's wearing kind of their sub-fusk, which is another kind of term you may or may not have heard of, probably not, but it is where you're wearing your black gown and you're wearing kind of a white shirt, and some people might wear kind of a bow tie, things like that. And so it's quite an experience when everyone's dressed up like that usually. And again, I was in self-isolation at that point, so it's quite unfortunate for me, but I could see on my Instagram that lots of people had gone like punting, so on the water, which is really nice, and everyone kind of takes their photos by the Radcam in Oxford, and so it's a really nice kind of occasion. And then people as well, when they've done their exams, they can often take part in trashing, where it's lots of confetti and everyone kind of gets really messy once they've done their exams, and they usually are wearing their sub-fusk again. So it's quite a nice way for everyone just to kind of let off some steam and celebrate that they've finished their exams. So hopefully I can do that next term.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I guess you Oxford people really love your sort of your formals and your sub-fosks, which is really an interesting term. I haven't actually heard that one before. I think it's just is it your gown then, or?
Yeah, it's basically just your gown, and it's when everyone is just kind of wearing their formal wear, and so you might wear like a black skirt or black trousers with it. So yeah, it's your formal wear.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and what's the Radcam that you were referring to? That's something camera. Is it Radcliffe?
Yeah,
camera?
Radcliffe camera. So that's kind of like the picturesque thing, which everyone refers to when you think of Oxford.
And is there a camera? I know. I guess it's sort of misleading. It's like to do with the Latin or Italian camera, like as in there's a room, or what does that actually refer to? Because yeah, I assume there is no actual camera.
I'm not sure what's in it. I'm hoping that I can go in there and have a proper look. I think the views are supposed to be nice, but I'm not actually sure where it gets its name.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just a really beautiful piece of architecture, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So one question that we get asked a lot is sort of something that you'd known when you were applying to Oxford. So that often centers around myths, sort of maybe something that you thought you knew, but it actually wasn't. And on Tuesday, Zara talked about something she thought, basically, and also yesterday, we also had Grace, who was talking about surrounding Oxford, and, if you're the only person from your school applying. And I know that you've also sort of been involved in sort of the welfare stuff at your college, sort of being welfare officer. So, yeah, I guess what are some of the myths that you find sort of both before applying and then while students sort of are also there in their first, maybe contributes to the anxiety you may have seen amongst students?
Yeah, so I was definitely one of those people who kind of let the misconceptions get to me. I definitely believed in them for a long time. That's why I was just so against even applying to Oxford. Like I really had to be convinced. I probably wouldn't have applied if my mum hadn't really believed in me, and a teacher, a geography teacher who saw potential in me. And this was very early on, actually, in year 12. And so I was surprised that I actually, you know, had someone backing me that early on. But I'm glad he was there from the start, because, you know, it really did take a long time for me to actually think, yeah, you know what, maybe I'll give it a try. Because I did just think, you know, it's not a place for people like me, state school educated. I'd be a first generation university student, you know, from a low income family, obviously an ethnic minority, a woman. I just, you know, I was like not fitting the stereotype, which I thought kind of existed. You know, people often refer to there being an Oxbridge type. And so I just thought, you know, there's no point even bothering. But then I just thought, okay, why not give it a try? I'd been visiting lots of different universities at their open days, and I hadn't really kind of warmed to any of them, which actually I found really frustrating, because I was like, oh, come on, like I just need to find somewhere. I didn't seem to connect, because I wanted to find a place which felt kind of inspiring and made me want to learn, but also a place where I thought I could kind of fit in and make friends. And so we'd already kind of got the train ticket to Oxford, and so we thought, okay, we might as well just go. And then when I went, I literally just fell in love with the place. I think, you know, if you can go and visit, because it's just incredible to be there in person, and actually just soak up the atmosphere. I just thought it was like a really kind of thriving place to be, and then looking at the architecture and the different parks there. And then since actually coming, I've realised that there isn't an Oxbridge type, and you can find people kind of from your background. You know, there's lots of different societies you can get involved in. So for me, I'm kind of involved in ACS, which is the African Caribbean Society. So you can kind of connect with people who might be from a similar ethnic background to you. And there's also things like the Class Act, which kind of brings together people and provides support for people kind of from low income backgrounds, but also state school educated and kind of low, just kind of low socioeconomic backgrounds, basically. And so there's lots of different ways you can kind of access support. So I think that is really great. And another misconception is about kind of your mental health. Obviously, mental health is going to be a struggle, especially during these times, but just in normal times at university, it's always going to be difficult to transition kind of from A levels going into university. But I think that the welfare support, certainly at my college, is really, really good. I've recently trained as a peer supporter, which is something we have where it's basically like a person within the community who does kind of 24 hours worth of training under the university counselling service. And so we learn all kind of different methods in order to kind of support people. And I think what's really nice is that it kind of lowers the boundaries for people in terms of trying to access mental health support, because I think it can often seem quite intimidating trying to kind of reach university services. But then if it's just a person who's located within the community who you can speak to, you know, it's confidential, and you can create a safe space and you just go there and talk about whatever you're concerned about. You know, it doesn't have to be large, it can be, you know, it's all relative to the person, right? But I think that's really, really great. And I know at my college, again, they kind of have these JCRTs. So again, JCR is the Junior Common Room. And, you know, once a week, they kind of bring food round for everyone and kind of create this space where they can just kind of chat. And it's definitely important to have things like that, you know, in COVID times, where it's just hard perhaps to connect with people as you might have done normally. And so I think that was another misconception, was that you just kind of, you wouldn't be able to cope. But I think there's definitely a lot of different layers of support, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, there's no need to go it alone when you're at university. And I guess what would one of your personal tips for getting past that, maybe some of those initial boundaries that when you were thinking of applying? I guess there were sort of more boundaries that sort of had just been artificial, right? So what do you think there was sort of just that initial, that gave you that initial spark to actually decide, you know what, now fall in love with Oxford, I'm actually going to apply? Sort of, what do you think helped you to do that? Was it, guess you mentioned that it was a particular person, and you know, for someone who doesn't necessarily have somebody supporting them, what would you say is good to sort of remember, or a piece of advice that you might give them?
I think ultimately it's about kind of cultivating your passion for your subject. I think that is kind of what can carry you through, because if you've got that passion, then you're thinking, yeah, I just want to delve into that more. And you're like, you know, why not just go for kind of the place where they're going to give me the best support and the best teaching possible? And so I just kind of was focusing on my subject and trying to understand it better, and kind of focus on myself and kind of see what I like doing. And then the more I kind of got into geography, the more I was kind of reading around, the more I kind of saw where I could take it, kind of, you know, career wise, the more I was just like, okay, well, you know, let's look at the rankings and kind of see, you know, which universities can offer me the best chance of really kind of getting into my subject and getting to a place I want to be. And then I thought, okay, well, Oxford seems to be one of the top ones for my subject, so I'll give that a try. But as I said, it was not an easy process, and I definitely had to kind of, you know, have that persistence, and, you know, just constantly thinking, why not? You know, what is the harm in just going to see it? And then once you've seen it, it's like, okay, well, what is the harm of just kind of reading a little bit more around my subject, you know, that summer after year 12. And then it's like, okay, well, let's, you know, it's just one place on your UCAS application, so it's like, okay, why not? So I think just constantly do that to yourself, because I could not believe that I'd be in this position, you know, a couple of years back. Absolutely not. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, so just do it.
Absolutely, like the Nike slogan, just do it.
Just do
and
it.
how did you sort of St. that one of the colleges that you visited while you were there? Because that's one other thing that's sort of quite different about Cambridge and Oxford, that you've got this whole like college system where even when you're at the university, you're technically like affiliated with a college, and when you apply, I guess you can technically like apply, like you can say you have no preference which college you want to go to, but most people will actually say, oh, I want to go to, or I want to go to Trinity, I want to go to, you know, Corpus Christi. Maybe you don't have a Corpus Christi over there, or maybe you do. Okay, you have a Corpus Christi, or maybe I want to go to Christ. Like, how do you actually make the decision as to which college to apply for?
Yeah, no, that is a good point. So interestingly, I didn't actually apply to Teddy Hall. I had applied to Brasenose. And so the way I kind of went through the selection process was kind of, firstly, you've got to kind of look for the colleges which do your subject. Not all the colleges will do them. And so that kind of narrowed the list down a little bit. And then I was looking at kind of location. For me, it was important to be kind of near the high street and kind of, you know, near where lots of things were going on. Like, I didn't want to be too far out. Some people don't mind that, but I wanted to be kind of right in the centre. And literally the location of St Edmund Hall and Brasenose is right in the centre, right near the Radcam, which is amazing. And then you've also got to kind of look at, you know, the facilities which they offer. You know, at some of the Oxbridge colleges, you know, they have huge grounds, and, you know, just amazing facilities. I think Teddy Hall, they have such a great library. It's beautiful, like it's based in this ancient church, like literally it's just hundreds of years old, and it's just stunning, and it's a really nice place to be in. And so even though I didn't apply there, that's definitely something which would have won me over for sure. And so yeah, it's definitely looking at all these different factors, you know, location, and you can also perhaps kind of look into who kind of teaches there, and just as well looking on different things like the student room and kind of seeing kind of what current students are thinking. I think that's really nice. And also UniReach, you can use us and you can kind of speak to someone. You can speak to someone who's currently studying your subject and kind of see what college they're at, and how they went about choosing their college and what their experience was. I think that's important to kind of understand. But then ultimately, I wouldn't get too kind of, you know, bogged down on a specific college, because I think most people just end up loving their college anyway. You know, like, as I said, I didn't choose Teddy Hall initially, but I knew it was the right place as soon as I arrived, because it is one of the kind of smaller, geographically, it's a smaller college. There's lots of people in the college, but it is on a kind of smaller site. But I think that's really nice, because it does give kind of a community vibe, because you'll just bump into friends or people you know just crossing the quad. And so I think that vibe was really good. And again, I think you kind of pick that up when you come and visit. So hopefully, if you're interested, you'll be able to visit and get a better sense that way.
Yeah, but absolutely. I mean, if anybody you're watching here, either now live or in the recording afterwards, wants to speak to somebody at Oxford, UniReach are the people to speak with. And I definitely agree that actually talk to somebody who's currently there, you're going to get the best sort of feel of what it's like. And even if you're talking to, for example, if I'm, you know, right now we're talking to Zoe, you know, if she's at Tech Hall, she'll also know some of the other colleges around Oxford. So at least, you know, especially if you're speaking to somebody who's been sort of, well, I guess we're now coming to the end of your first year, you'll know people sort of at the other colleges, and maybe even have gone to a couple. I know that when I was at Cambridge, a lot of people would sort of have this goal where they would try to visit every single college and try to have formal at every single college before they graduate. So people do like to explore, and you end up becoming friends with people at different colleges. So if you do want to speak to somebody, yeah, go and get in touch with UniReach, and they'll be in touch with a mentor. One thing, I guess, before we come to sort of the end, that would be interesting to touch on is, you said you applied to Brasenose, but ended up at Teddy Hall. For anybody who's not familiar with sort of the way that admissions works at Oxford, that might be a bit confusing, or it might make people think, you know, how did you apply to one and then end up at another? How does that process exactly work? Is it to do with pooling? Because I know at Cambridge there's like pooling, right?
Exactly, yes. So there are certain colleges which are kind of more popular. That doesn't mean they're better. It's just kind of, you know, people tend to kind of follow what's trendy and kind of, you know, go for the one people think is the most popular, and so they go for that. And Brasenose was obviously a popular one that year, and they really liked my application, and they didn't want to lose me, and so they just kind of redistributed me, and that is through kind of the pooling system. You're put into a pool, and then you're kind of distributed out to other colleges who may, you know, they may have more applications available, or, you know, it might just not be as popular that year. That doesn't mean it's worse. It just means that, yeah, as I said, people tend to kind of flock towards certain ones which they see other people going towards. And so, you know, it doesn't make it more difficult to get into certain popular ones. Like, you will just be redistributed. And, you know, as I've said, I'm sure you'll enjoy it just as much. I certainly did. As soon as I visited for my interviews, I just knew Teddy Hall was the place for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, that's a great tip as well. And great, sort of to reiterate that, yeah, when you apply to, you know, you'll really enjoy it. And also at the same time, to let people know that this system does exist, the pooling system. So I think that it's easy as an applicant to get your head sort of wrapped around the idea that you can only apply to one college, which is technically true. But if you sort of apply to the wrong one, you're going to damage your chances. And so I think what some applicants end up doing is trying to play the statistics game, right? The numbers game, and say, I'm going to go for X college because, you know, they're not the fashionable college this year, or maybe go for Y college because nobody else will be applying there, or I'm going to go to this college because of, you know, whatever reason. And I think, you know, that's probably a difficult game to play, because you don't know what everybody else thinks. Maybe everybody else is thinking, you know what, I'm going to apply to that college because nobody else is applying this year. Or, you know, maybe I'm going to apply to that one because, you know, they've got this amazing professor that nobody else knows about. You know, I think, yeah, as you said, it's just about going for the college that you really fall in love with, at least initially, the one that you think is the nicest to apply for. And then sort of whichever one you end up at, you're really enjoy it. But at the same time, so there is that pooling system. So, you know, if you want to play the numbers game, you can try. but at the same time, you don't need to fuss about it too much, because if Oxford sort of and the professors really like you, they think you're sort of Oxbridge material, and there is no Oxford type, but if they think you're good enough, basically, and that you hold up in that environment, that they like you, then they will be able to sort of arrange so that you will, if there's not enough space at, say, Brasenose, they'll be able to say to the other professors at other colleges, this candidate is really good, they're really fantastic, this is what they've done in the interview, would you like to have a look at them? And at Oxford, while you're there, then they will be able to interview you as well, right? Because you're there for a couple of days. So did you end up having an interview with at Teddy Hall as well, or not?
Yeah, so I had my interviews with Teddy Hall, both of them were there, but I do hear about some people where they are kind of interviewing at multiple colleges. That is quite common. And yeah, and that's never an issue. And you, as we've already said, you are usually very happy with whatever college you end up with.
Yeah, I suppose by the time we're getting into sort of complaining about which college we're at Oxford, we're sort of, that we're already at this sort of amazing place. And yeah, I think, anybody will be more than happy to end up at an amazing university like Oxford anyway, that, at the college level, it's really sort of, not the biggest deal anyway. Perfect. So yeah, well, thank you very much for your time today, Zoe. I think that's been really informative, and everybody, I can see that a lot of people sort of really, came in, and if anybody is tuning in the recording as well, this will be available afterwards for anybody sort of here at the end and wasn't around at the beginning as well. So I will just sort of end on the final note, which is that Zoe is again from UniReach. So just to reiterate what we've said at the beginning about UniReach, UniReach will connect you with a mentor if you do want to talk about things relating to Oxford, or do you? I know you're at Oxford, but you also have you will also be able to give or connect with mentors from Cambridge. I think that's something new that you're just working on right now, right, Zoe?
Exactly, yeah. So we've expanded to Cambridge now. So we've got lots of Cambridge mentors, so you can apply for them as well.
Super. Yeah, that's fantastic. So yeah, if you want to apply for Oxford, obviously you'll be able to get matched with a mentor from UniReach. And equally, the exciting thing is that they've just launched that Cambridge initiative. And the way that you'll be able to sign up is via the UniReach website. So UniReach will be tagged in the post. You'll be able to just go to their Instagram profile. And we are also opening up slots for a really cool joint program that's running together, which will harness pretty much sort of the joint resources of EasyA and UniReach. And the waiting list is available in EasyA bio, might be available on UniReach as well in one of the posts. So yeah, if you check out our bios, then you'll be able to sign up there. It's just a short form, and basically the program will allow you to connect with mentors. So from EasyA, if you are stuck on a math problem that's really difficult, and we'll be expanding to other subjects, if you're stuck on a problem, you'll be able to get a hold of a mentor via the app within a couple of minutes. And with UniReach, you'll be able to get connected with a mentor. So really the perfect combination. If you want to get involved, just sign up via the form, and we'll be in touch. So that brings us to the end of today's Instagram Live. If you enjoyed it, definitely come along to the other ones. We'll be hosting them throughout, I would say throughout this week, but actually the last one this week is going to be on Friday. And then we'll be continuing again from next month till Friday, same time, 10 o'clock, and sort of just 30 minutes. But we'll be here to answer any questions that you have. And if you do have them as well, if you're watching this video that's recorded, then do feel free to leave your questions in the comments, and we'll make sure to address them in the next live. So again, thank you very much for coming, Zoe. That's been a really great insight into Oxford. I think my key takeaway will again be sort of just do it, right? If you're thinking of applying to Oxford, then don't worry about sort of the stigma or the myths sort of surrounding it, because chances are that those myths really are just myths, and you sort of follow your path and go for it. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Zoe, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And for everybody else, we'll see you in the next live. Bye-bye.
Bye.